Welcome to The Girlfriend God, a podcast in search of and in service to the divine feminine, bringing you an equal mix of academic research and emotional spiritual experience. Please rate and review on your podcast streaming platform. Leave a comment on YouTube. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Let's get in the flow. So Dr. Ionescu, my friend Carla, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Sometimes
Thank you for having me.
co-host, sometimes co-discusser, I guess. I don't know. The show's not really an interview, so
Right.
but today it's kind of a follow-up to the episode that you did on horned goddesses, and you and
Mhm.
I have been talking about horned goddesses, and I've been talking to you about antlered goddesses. So I think today's conversation is just going to be kind of a mix of those two things, right? Because there's definitely some crossover there. I can
Yes.
tell you that so I'm writing this book that's kind of a follow-up to Caroline Wise's book about Ellen of the Ways, and she she essentially said in the interview that she did on Liz Child's podcast that, now, Ellen was just the name that she gave to this experience that she had and this kind of personal gnosis. But she actually said what the basis of my book is going to be. She actually said, this idea of antlered women and antlered goddesses is a trope and a symbol that crosses geography and cultures and time periods, over several millennia. And the source that she cited most frequently was the deer goddess of ancient Siberia, which I had the good fortune to be able to get from interlibrary loan from the university. Um, I had to give it back. So
Right.
unfortunately, I don't have a lot of notes from there because I knew I could get it again. Right. But from what little I did remember, I photocopied a few pages. So the woman that wrote that book, her theory and her evidence of this was largely based on archaeological evidence and archaeological digs, particularly with pottery, where they had these images that combined images of women and images of deer. And over time, that became images of antlered women,
Got it.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in your experience, is that also true for horned goddesses? Is there archaeological evidence of that kind of, throughout different time periods that shows that it's not specific to a particular culture, right?
Hmm. I think that's a great question, actually. I don't think I've thought of it that way. Um, hmm. It's an interesting question. Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to think of what are my top picks. So we've got like Hecate and Selene, for example, who are called horn goddesses,
Mm-hmm.
but they are carrying the moon, the crescent moon on their head.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily count in a way. So this is what I mean. I think there's a difference between horn goddesses in a way and antlered goddesses, a slight
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
difference. Um, Ironically, as Artemis, who is the goddess of deer, let's say, or deer are her animals, she doesn't actually wear the deer antlers. And so, but I was thinking of this. Next week, I want to do a podcast on maenads, and one of the most famous images of maenads is maenads that wear antlers. And so that is a sort of the wild women of the forest.
Okay.
And so now that I'm thinking of it, even based on what you said, it seems that there is more of a cross-cultural, cross-temporal pattern of wild women and sometimes men that
Right.
wear a headdress of antlers.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? That seems to
Yes.
be more the norm rather than like a goddess that's worshipped because she has antlers kind of thing. You
Right.
know what I'm
Right.
saying? Mm-hmm.
So I do have some notes, not from that book, but other notes that I took in the research that I did. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just using the notes that I started to take for the book that I'm writing, right?
Yeah.
And I recently came across, and I do have some pictures that I can share. I recently found this. It was a YouTube video where this woman, she's an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and she displays her art, and then she talks about the inspiration for the art. And let me see if I can find it, and then I'll share it. All right, well, whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't find the YouTube video, but one of the things that she talked about, so she goes through this artwork, right? And she talks about and it's of a deer with antlers, and the sun in its antlers, that's a folk tale, and I can get into that in a little bit because I have that in my notes too.
Mm-hmm.
But she is doing the theme of the art that she's working on is Polish folklore,
Okay.
and she has images in her video that she shows the audience, and they are Polish coats of arms,
Mm.
and many Polish coats of arms have reindeer antlers,
Mm-hmm.
because they symbolize the double cross. And
Really?
she also mentioned uh Yelena, also spelled with a J, Jelena, the Wise, Jelena the Wise, which is a Russian fairy tale about an
Okay.
antlered woman.
That's fascinating for a couple of reasons. Number one, I never thought about the reindeer antlers as double crossed, although I wonder if that's a Christian adaptation of a much older mythology.
Probably.
Yeah. Um, I do think that antlers, especially in Eastern European or even Northern European, anywhere where there's powerful deer, and reindeer, of course, Siberia is one of those places. I do think that there's a lot of connection between like the hunt. Like, so when people used to hunt back in the day, they used to sort of honor and be in awe of these massive animals. And
Right.
so, right. And so for men, if we're talking about men, I think that for them, wearing the antlers is a symbol of a type of conquest or conquering.
Right. Right.
For women, I think it's less conquest, more empowerment, like taking on the power of this majestic creature.
Right.
Um, Not to say that women didn't hunt. I think they hunted way more than we think they did.
Yes.
And certainly, certainly my goddess is a huntress. And so, but yeah, I could totally see that as a pre-Christian symbol of, and of course, like that's sort of like a blended symbol of wilderness, power, awe, right? And then, of course, also the mystery, I think, of reindeer or even large game deer. They're so beautiful, yet quiet, majestic, yet nonviolent. Like there's so much characteristics around the
Right.
deer, the reindeer, surviving through the harsh winters, protecting their, all that kind of animal imagery. So,
Right. I mean, I do think that some of these, like not just antlered women and antlered goddesses, but a lot of, because I go on and talk about, or I plan to go on and talk about in the book that, this trope that exists throughout history and across cultures, um, is born of the symbol of the deer, which is also a trope that exists, across millennia and throughout the world. And I think a lot of those symbols are for the same reason, right? Like just because humans were just in awe of these things. That's like,
Absolutely.
initially we thought that the figurines that were like the Venus of Willendorf, we thought they were all goddesses, but really they're just women because
Right.
people were fascinated with women and their ability to give birth, right?
That's
Which
right.
of course led to goddess spirituality and then believing that the creator was feminine. But
Right.
you know what I mean? So, because I think that in, very early human history, when we started to draw and to create through art what we saw and what we were fascinated by, that's where it started, right? And in
Agreed.
cave paintings and things like that, that's why there are always large game and women.
Yes. 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 Yes, I think you're absolutely right. Like I think about the stag, the stag is such in a way, a mysterious. There are some old tales that say that the stag can cross between this reality and like a fairy reality.
Right,
So the stag is sort of this kind of like the unicorn almost, which is also a horned herbivore,
right,
powerful horse,
right,
right? So that there's something majestic. And then, of course, you associate the antlers with crowns, but crowns of wilderness. I think the stag really gives itself over to a great deal of symbolism. Like it's just,
yes,
yeah, And even in like modern shows, like in Harry Potter, there's a stag. I can't remember the name, Patronus, right? Patronus.
yes,
In the House of the Dragon, the new one, there is a stag that the king, whose names are now escaping me, wants to a white stag. This mysterious white stag that they want to kill in order to like I don't know part of the hunt. Actually, the white stag is actually a long symbol of both purity and power, and the sort of almost fairy realm, supernatural.
right.
Like, yeah, yeah.
So the other thing is, this symbol of deer, and the reindeer in particular, because of course the reindeer are the only species of deer where the female have the antlers, right? That's why we associate these antlered goddesses with not just with deer, but with reindeer in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I came across just recently, like within the past week, was this website called Gather Victoria. I assume that means Victoria. I don't know if she's in Canada or Britain. I don't know. It just says Victoria. She does not specify where and like which Victoria.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Interesting.
so it's
Okay.
an article that she wrote around the winter solstice, and she talks about the original, what she calls the original story of Santa Claus and the flying reindeer. Of course, there are many stories that precede the version that you and I know. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
share my screen. So she says, why not tell the story of the ancient deer mother? It was she
Oh
who
yeah.
once flew through winter's longest dark night with the life-giving light of the sun in her horns. And I have more to say about that because there's another
Hmm.
fairy tale that I found about that. So she says, ever since the early Neolithic. Now, of course, this is another thing that I found that fails to have source material, which,
Hmm.
irks me.
Right.
But I've read enough other things about this that I take it as truth because I've read other things that talk about the same stuff that does cite source material. So
Hmm.
um, they depended on the reindeer for survival. They followed the reindeer migrations, right? So you always hear me talk about the Sami.
So cute.
Right? And from the British Isles, Scandinavian, Russian, Scandinavia, Russia, Serbia, across the land bridge of the Bering Strait. She was a revered spiritual figure associated with fertility, motherhood, regeneration, and the rebirth of the sun, which is the theme of the winter solstice. So I wanted to bring this up because she had such
Oh,
great
this is one of the pictures that I had too, as well.
imagery. Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
perfect.
Cool.
That's
Shrines and
shamanic headdress.
altars, buried in ceremonial graves,
Mm-hmm.
shamanic headdresses. And
Mm-hmm.
when I listened to, C.G. Dolan, who you've heard me talk about, he was in season 1. Hopefully, he
Mm-hmm.
will be joining us again in season 3 to talk about some of these things. When he gave his lecture on the Sami, there are branches of Sami tribes that have female shamans who
Right.
wear antlers when they take their shamanic journeys. They
Mm-hmm.
become the flying reindeer so that they can see above the herd.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
But so she just mentions a few things, right? Extra in the standing stones. Do you know about the standing stones? The deer stones and the standing stones, which are megalithic structures.
I think so.
Okay.
Oh,
There are
well, no,
also
hold on. Not these ones that you have in this image. No.
there's also some that are kind of a mystery. Like I can't remember where that is in the world, but there's deer stones where there shouldn't be deer
Mm,
stones, like in parts of the world where there weren't deer or there weren't reindeer because they're
interesting.
flying deer. Um, it's the deer mother who took flight. Anyway, like I said, I just wanted to show you some of these pictures and see here she's talking about the Sami, the indigenous people of the Nordic countries. Be
Mm-hmm.
I can't I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Ivy or Bev is the name for the sun goddess associated with motherhood, the fertility of plants, and the reindeer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really trying to get in touch with, there is a North American association of Sami tribes or some such thing in the United States. And I'm going
Yeah.
to try and see if someone would be willing to come on the show for next season and talk about the Sami because I'm a little obsessed with the Sami.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, there are none living in the United States, but they still practice the culture if it's in their bloodline. I really like this image a lot.
Yeah. Yes. That's very Santa Claus, but in female form.
Right. And now I'm fascinated with this book, Goddess Embroideries of Eastern Europe.
Wow.
We're going to have to check that out. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I could talk about that article forever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's Hungarian, probably initially Scythian. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Um, that has folklore about the solar reindeer,
Yep.
and the hunter is chasing the reindeer and winds up killing the reindeer, but the reindeer carries the sun in its antlers. It's the reindeer mother's purpose to return the sun, right? To return spring. I don't remember the whole folk tale, but so that exists in Hungarian Scythian culture. And those stories are very similar to folklore around sacred cows, sacred
Right.
bulls, also
Right.
horned animals like you talked about that are
Right.
associated with goddesses.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking of Hathor, who has the horns with the sun in it, and Isis later, who has the horns with the sun in it. And this concept of the horns with the sun in the middle of it is quite powerful. And then the sacred horns of Crete, we think may have been cow horns or cattle horns that were positioned in such a way that the sun would come through them at a certain time, usually the spring equinox, sunrise, and
Like
then
Stonehenge for horns.
kind of, yeah, yeah. And because the roofs are flat, people could go and sit outside and eat and have rituals or whatever they wanted, and watch the suns come through the horns too. So because people had these sacred horns in Crete, for example, on top of most of their major houses and certainly on top of their temples. And so there was a lot, like it was almost like common knowledge, not only just like one, like Stonehenge, but like everyone knew it and everyone was aware of this sort of aspect of it, the symbolism of it. And then, and then when we go north, and we see all of these reindeer now with sun in them, that's quite fascinating. That's quite a fascinating connection, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And the idea of carrying the sun between the horns too is powerful. Or bringing the sun back.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It's really powerful. Yeah. I mean, it seems a little more in depth or deeper than just, wearing a headdress. It seems more like carrying light, I mean, you're carrying.
Right.
Yeah. 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 The bringer of light kind of thing,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Which is, that's the other like male mythology we've been sold, right? It's the father of light. Well, no, no. Really, it's the mother of light.
No, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think the deer and the and the reindeer carrying the light, I think that brings it down to the earth. It makes it more mother. Absolutely, yes. Rather than father, because I think father is often up in the sky, associated with sun in the sky.
Right.
But bringing it down where the deer mother or the reindeer mother is carrying it, that's
right.
That's a lot more. It's being pulled down and brought in. There's a lot more action happening there. There's a lot more,
Right.
Yeah. That's really cool.
So I have so you know about my Ellen pillow that I sleep with, right? But
Yes.
I have another pillow with a digital download. Actually, the woman was selling it as a painting, and I asked her if this other thing that I got from Etsy, and I asked her if I could do that. I said, "Can you sell me?" I said, "I'll pay what you're asking for the print, but can you send it to me as a digital download because I want to print it on fabric and make a pillowcase out of it."
That's cool.
So she did that, but I want to show it to you because it's relevant to what we're talking about. So
All right.
I will be right back. So this art, and I talked to the artist at some length, just messaging her on the Etsy app, and she told me, I don't remember everything she told me, but the bottom line is that all of this symbology, is that a word?
Yeah, symbology. I think it is. Yeah.
Symbolism, symbology. I think symbology, symbiology.
I'll take symbology over
Okay, I'll take symbology for $100, Alex. So all of these tropes.
Oh wow.
Are actually, and you even have if you can see them or not. This like the swastikas.
It's got everything. That's the swastika backwards. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean what most people think it means, right? That's a very ancient symbol. So it has the deer and the antlers and the Ouroboros, right? And this kind of sun, this Proto-European sun maiden goddess.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she said that all of these influences were um, Lithuanian.
Interesting.
Like her heritage was Lithuanian. And so all of that art was inspired by folk stories that she was told as a
Hmm.
young child and all of that from her ancestors. And so I just wanted to share that with you, with
Yeah,
everyone.
that's beautiful, and it just makes me want to go back home. I really, I feel like the universe is really pointing me in the go back, go back, go back, look up
Yeah.
things, look up things. Just gotta find that funding. But yeah, I
If
just
you
feel
if
like
you go back home and find some Romanian antlered goddess, I'm gonna lose my mind.
no, I have no doubt that I will because I watched this documentary in which long stories through the Etruscans and the Scythians, there is a trope of Artemis Bendis in Eastern Europe,
Mm.
and she's depicted a little bit differently. No doubt in my mind that there will be some type of antler connection, deer connection there. Just hasn't been really looked at or even maybe bothered with. So I'm very excited to see that, but so it's got to happen. It's got to happen. I'm putting it out there. Today is the new moon.
Yep.
I'm putting it out there, right? A summer back home sounds like a plan to me. Yeah.
And when you go to Anatolia,
Yeah.
right, there's that one museum. Sent you a clip like a million years ago of that guy talking about the deer, and there's a collection of all these bronze and gold
Yes, that's right. I remember.
deer.
Yes. Yes.
So you can get me something from the gift shop there. Um,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, yeah, I mean they're everywhere. It's true. They're everywhere. Documenting them though and arranging them is probably going to be a bit more complex,
mhm.
but the symbolism is definitely a very unconscious archetype. It's a very collective unconscious archetype, I think.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
Um, well,
Isn't it
and deer,
devastating?
and I'm sorry.
Isn't it devastating that it's become such a like terrible symbol, such a like a
Oh, the
supposedly
swastika.
symbol? No, the horns, the antlers.
Oh,
Right?
yes, yes, because it's so connotated with evil and the devil
Yeah.
and blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
It is a bit heartbreaking.
I was watching something. We watch our guilty pleasure is The Unexplained, hosted by William Shatner, because I
Hmm.
love William Shatner.
Same, same, same.
Oh, you should watch it just for him.
I mean, I'm a Trekkie, so I've seen
Okay.
every single Star Trek there ever existed.
So he has a show called The Unexplained, where he does, his overacting as usual, and um, but it was about satanic symbols and satanic cults, and so of course they talked about Satan and the devil, and all the so-called experts were talking about how this was like an ancient symbol, and I'm thinking, no, it's not, because Christians like invented the devil, so
Right.
stop using the word ancient.
I know, I know. Yeah, actually, we do have to make a little caveat to speak about this idea of the ancient, because people think
Okay,
the 1800s is ancient or the 1600s is ancient.
or medieval,
Right. And I'm like, dude, that's like yesterday.
right?
In the span of humans' existence, it's not even 1,000 years ago, people.
Right.
That is not ancient. Not at all. Not at all. No.
So some other things, some other notes. I actually still have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Okay.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
All right. So back to the deer stones.
Uh-huh.
So this is what I have in my notes. So these are these megalithic monuments in Mongolia and elsewhere, but the ones in Mongolia were left behind by nomadic civilizations between the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and nearly 90% were found in Mongolia. But it should be noted that deer stones have also been found in other parts of the world, such as Siberia. If deer culture, this is my own take, right? And I said, if deer culture and deer mythology was so prevalent, doesn't it make sense to assume there were deer goddesses,
100%.
right?
Because there are almost no deer gods
Right,
other than Cernunnos
right.
and like the Green Man, maybe.
Hmm.
There are men who wear antlered headdresses, like men
Right,
in history, for example.
right, right,
There are warrior men who might have worn them in battle. But as far as a deer god to be worshipped or an antlered god, even a horn god, other than a few Egyptians, there are
right,
way fewer male gods
right,
than there are female representations. Absolutely.
right. So in Hindu mythology, the I'm going to mess up this pronunciation terribly. The Altareva Upanishad.
The Upanishads, yeah.
Okay, so I didn't do that bad.
No.
Well, this particular one, the Altareva Upanishad, tells us that the goddess Saraswati takes the form of a red deer called Rohit,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
Rohit, Rohit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Deer have significant role in the mythology of various people located all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
both
And
as
what's
an object of worship, incarnation of deities,
yeah,
the object of heroic quests and deeds,
yeah,
right? We've got a lot of hunter stories
yep,
and all this different folklore,
yep.
um, or as a magical disguise or an enchantment, right? Like that's the spin-off of the Ellen of the Ways story that goes with the dream of mask and whatever, which translated as from Welsh is the dream of Magnus Maximus,
Mm.
right? Who is enchanted by this beautiful woman in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And Ellen of the Ways has this association with her. That's one of the theories in Ellen's book,
Right.
or in Caroline's book. So, um, what if this is again, this was just my kind of thrown out theories. I said, what if the fairy tale dear princesses are downgraded goddesses, right? I mean, if the male patriarchy took over, if that happened in Greek and Roman, right, that our goddesses were like downgraded and altered and had new qualities given and old qualities taken away. If
Yep.
these folk tales and fairy tales still exist, how do we know that that those characters in those folk tales and fairy tales weren't once something else, something much
Absolutely.
more powerful?
Absolutely. And this is what I mean about for males, the antlers always represent conquest. From the
Right,
old days to today, for people who have like deer heads in their living rooms, this is
right,
a representation of conquest. And
right,
so I absolutely agree that most likely deer goddesses were then kind of written into as like real deer or like special, like the biggest stags or the biggest or the white deer or once again the unicorn or whatever,
right,
the sort of like feminization of the animal and then conquered by the male and
right,
then worn or mounted.
right,
Yeah, very
right,
much so. Yeah, I would say no doubt.
right. So the other thing I finally put together, which seems obvious now, is that it makes sense that some of these very old stories and myths involve reindeer and other deer because that particular animal goes back to nomadic hunter gatherer societies, right? So then we talk about that's what led me to this Siberian ancient history and the Sami. So I started listening. I re-listened to C.G. Dolan's lectures about those, and his lecture on ancient Siberia and the like his lecture is titled "The Often Overlooked Influence of Siberia on Modern Day Shamanism."
Mm, that's a good one.
Um, and he talks about how, part of the issue is that the Siberian migration from east to west was so diverse, right? Like they split off and went in so many different directions. And the same is true of the Sami,
Yep.
right? There are so many different branches, but yet they still all have a few things in common, which is how we've discovered over time that they've been tied together. So one of the Siberian tribes are called the Kets, and the Kets are thought to be the only survivors of an ancient nomadic people believed to have originally inhabited central and southeastern and southern Siberia, not southeastern, just southern.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kets practice shamanism and animism, and more modern Kets also now practice Russian Orthodoxy, but they're closely related to other indigenous people of Siberia and North America.
Interesting.
And the shamans of the Kets have been identified as practitioners of healing as well as other local ritualistic spiritual practices. And supposedly there were several different types of Ket shamans, differing in function, right? Like one for sacral rites, one for spiritual healing, one for. So the different shaman have different powers and they're associated with different animals.
Okay.
The most common shaman is the reindeer shaman.
Okay.
So I drew the parallel myself, and I think Caroline talks about it too. Caroline does talk about it. I don't remember if she talked about it in the book or if she talked about it in her interview with Liz. Um, Caroline's book, and when Caroline had her experiences when she was working with ley lines. Now, ley lines are a theory that has been debunked, and most people, some people still believe in it or whatever. But the ley lines are these, kind of connections of energy lines
Ley lines have been
across
debunked.
plants. Sort of. I don't know.
Well, I didn't hear of that.
Maybe not. I don't.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know that much about ley lines, to be honest.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
So Caroline had the theory that ley lines were also the trackways of the deer.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is her belief that the tribes, like the Sami, who traveled along the ley lines or the deer tracks, the reindeer shaman would use his powers to go above and see. That's why it had to be a reindeer, right? Because that's the one that's the flying deer.
Yeah.
To go above, and he could observe the whole herd, make sure we didn't lose anybody, see what was coming,
Hmm.
if there was trouble up ahead, see where we'd been, see if there were predators, what we were going to be able to eat in 100 miles or 50 miles.
Hmm.
So I just think, I don't know, all that's really interesting. I don't
Yeah,
know
that's
if it's
quite.
true, but it's a really
Yeah.
interesting theory.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, first, I think ley lines are real.
Okay. I do too. I
So I don't
do.
know. I don't know if I don't know the science around them, but I do know, as you say, that people did track them either with stones or with different paths and stuff like that. It would make sense that animals may have also felt them because there's some theories that back in the day they were more powerful as ley lines or we were more able to sense them or sense the pull of them or whatever of
Right.
the crosses. So I think that theory makes sense then that a tribe would follow in the footsteps and that a shaman could act like a lead reindeer or whatever. Yeah, I think
Right. Right.
totally is a promising theory for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because the nomadic people understood things that we are so unaware of in such a way that they
Right.
were almost unaware that they understood them. Like they kind of took it for granted, their connection to everything is natural
Right.
and energetical was so powerful because it had to be, right? Because they, in a way, they acted on their instincts in order to follow, all of nature's signals. So it makes sense to me that they would have known more than we do, and that it took us forever to figure stuff out because we're so disconnected from
Right.
nature,
Right.
right?
I mean, you've talked about before how, um, when we think about ancient people, we want to label them as primitive, but
Yeah,
when we study ancient culture and ancient ruins, it is anything but primitive,
that's right.
right? You said that when we did our thing on the Chevo cave and
Mm-hmm.
the what's the other thing?
Oh, the hypogeum.
The hypogeum. Yes, sorry, that word escaped me. And
Right.
I do believe, I like I said, I also believe in ley lines, and I believe in, that there are parts of the earth that are more spiritually charged than others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because energy is everything, right? Energy is
Yep.
everything, vibration is everything.
Yep.
I have heard the theory, and I always think about it when I watch my dogs do it, that when dogs turn around several times before they lay down,
Yeah.
there is a theory that they do that because they need to be aligned with the energy around them before they can settle down.
Interesting.
They need to align with the energy of the earth.
Wow. I mean, certainly animals are
Might
much
not
more.
be true, but it's very cool to think about it. And yes,
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
much more in tune than we are
Yeah.
to those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. So where were
oh, I was just saying that. So we were talking about the deer stones earlier. So I just found my notes on other places in the world that deer stones have been found.
okay.
And this article, I don't remember which article this is because I don't know the title page with me. But they have found deer stones in central, northern, and western Mongolia. We already knew that. And in
Yeah.
the neighboring regions of southern Russia,
Yep.
Kazakhstan, and northwestern China.
Yep. I mean, that's the
On
region.
the open steppe,
Hmm.
it's a word I can't pronounce.
Like
Okay.
steppes.
No, I know what this steppe is. That's that slightly elevated land that runs
Mm,
from, you know what I'm talking about?
no.
Hang on a second. I'm going to bring up a place that actually can describe it better than I just tried to. It's actually really interesting. It's a land feature.
Mm, like a plateau.
So it's a large area of flat, unforested grassland that runs through southeastern Europe and Siberia.
Wow. Okay.
It's an ecoregion characterized by grassland plains without trees. And it's in Eurasia, blah, blah, blah. There are different steps throughout the world, but there's one really long one, and that's the one that runs through Eastern Europe, I think.
Okay.
So I saved the best for last. This was certainly the most exciting article I had, which is about the symbol of deer in ancient and early medieval cultures in um, Az- Azerbaijan. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I just had to look up where that was. Have you heard of this country?
No.
It is in It's actually a republic, and it's a transcontinental country located at the boundary of Eastern Europe and Western Asia.
Hmm. Okay.
So you can picture that in your world map,
Yes.
right? Geography is so not my strong suit. So when I'm doing this research, every time I learn something new, I'm like, I have no idea where that is. And I have to like consult the atlas. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Like when you
Yeah.
told me you were going to Turkey, I was like, okay, Turkey. Had to look it up on the map, see where it was.
Uh-huh. That's fine. That's what maps are for, dude. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. It's a
Right.
tool, right? It's a
That's right.
tool. It's at my disposal. That's why they made them.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So this article, I mean, this fucking blew me away. Um, Especially when they talk about, because we don't really care so much about the early medieval area. But the
Right.
Bronze and Iron Age, super
What a
fascinating.
time to be alive.
The Bronze and Iron Age.
Yeah.
We were born at the wrong time, Carla.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you know what? We were probably born at just the right time.
I was gonna say maybe it's the right
Because
time.
we're part of this bringing her back,
That's right.
right? Letting people know. Got to let the people know.
We need to start that hashtag, I think. I think we need to do the bring her back hashtag.
I think it's already out there.
Is it?
Where she is returning is out there. I know that because I've used that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. Like we need to unite under a term or two, you know? Yeah.
Get on that.
I'm adding it to my tags, okay?
All right.
Uh,
The last hashtag I tried to promote was promote, not compete, and it fell on its face.
oh
I really
yeah.
thought that was going to be a thing, but
There is
no.
a bring her back. There is a bring her back hashtag, but it's like all weird people.
Well,
It's
it
not.
was probably like a kidnapping thing. We shouldn't use that. Bring her back, like bring her home.
Yeah. Okay. So
We
that
should use Liz Kelly's book title as a hashtag.
what
Home
is
to
it?
her.
Home to her. Yeah. We need something, actually. We should maybe collaborate with others. We need something that, though, I mean, we use the divine feminine, we use a few of them, but we could come up with something as a sort of almost like a revolution,
Mhm.
or and also at the same time a unifying sort of
Right,
term or hashtag where
right.
we can all, because I would love to use something like that for everyone that's doing this work that we're studying, that we're looking at, that we're talking about.
When I was talking with the Filianists, who hopefully I'm going to be doing an episode with one of them later this week,
Mhm.
they were talking about that, the problematic, and I've complained about that before, right? I mean, even use of the word goddess. If you do a search, it's always about find your inner goddess and connect with your inner goddess and be a goddess badass. And like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Stop using that word that way. Right. And
Yeah.
I feel similarly about the divine feminine and feminine divine and all of that. So they were talking about they really like the hashtag sacred feminine.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one.
So
Yeah.
I try and use that.
Yep.
And it's sad that we have to have the right hashtag just to get people to
It's true. Like to
find what
connect.
they're looking for. But you also have to, it's a way to sort through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can search by hashtag. So
That's right.
it is a good tool. It is a good tool. Okay. So the symbol of deer is found as early as the Paleolithic epoch and was subsequently continuously represented in the Mesolithic, Neolithic, and Iron Ages. But by the early medieval period, the appearance of deer in art is significantly reduced, reflecting the disappearance of totemism and the spread of other religions in the area. That makes sense. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
you could say that about everywhere, not just Azerbaijan. I really hope I'm saying that correctly. Sounds
Mm-hmm.
right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hope so.
I agree. I agree. In fact, the loss of totemism is another is another aspect of spirituality that we've lost, and in particular to deer. Another sort of like matter, or what's the word I'm looking, like something that we can touch and feel and have, like a
Right,
totem, right? That's the role of a totem, and yet tell stories about. I think the loss of that has really also affected much of our spirituality and
right.
connection. Yeah.
Hmm. So this was really interesting. Tell me something and tell our listeners something, because maybe maybe they don't know either.
Mm.
Uh, Tell me what, in ancient terms, what Turkic means versus Turkish, or is there a
Uh,
difference? You're supposed to know these things, my ancient
uh,
historian.
uh, I think they are
Do they mean
similar.
the same thing?
I think so, but don't quote me. I'm not an expert on Turkish history. The only difference that I would suggest, and again, someone can maybe correct us, is that Turkish refers more to like a modern nationality, where Turkic is more of an earlier style, tradition of the area. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Turkish people are the people who are attached to the Turkish Republic as a citizen.
So that's what I mean,
Turkic
the
people are
nationality.
all the nations speaking different dialects of Turkish language from Mongolia to Eastern Europe.
Okay, so kind of what
So
I
it's
said,
more, so Turkic is more of a generic
like a lifestyle, I
term.
would call like like a tradition, like a like a
Yeah,
cultural thing, I
hey,
guess.
Carla.
I don't
Okay.
have any of the words today. I have nothing, no words.
Okay. All right. So listen to this. This article had so much good stuff, and I'm probably not going to get to it all. Evidence of deer worship by ancestors of the Azerbaijanis is the usage of names. Maral, Maral, translates as deer. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this correctly. Yeran, Djeyran, translates as gazelle, and those were popular women's names.
Really?
Yes. Other names, other name traces of the totem of the deer remain among the northern Kyrgyz, were one of the largest tribes in were one of the largest tribes in men, dubbed Buku, Buqu, which is Kyrgyz language, which in Kyrgyz language means male deer. Deer were one of the main totems among ancient Turkic tribes. According to legend, a woman with antlers, the daughter of the sacred patron of deer, mountain sheep, and goat, was born of a deer and became the progenitor of the Buku tribe.
Mm-hmm.
This name connection survived for many centuries. For example, Iordan, a Byzantine historian of the 6th century, cites the interesting myth of Western Huns, according to which a female deer showed to the Hun hunters a way out of the swamp.
Mm. Again, another deer showing the way, right?
I mean, it just, and it just goes on and on and on and on.
Yep. I'm not
In
surprised.
another legend, a hunter meets a deer suckling her fawn. The deer, seeing that the hunter aiming at them, sat down on her back legs, begging the hunter to spare them. The hunter did not kill the mother or the fawn, And after a few days, the deer and her fawn came to the house of the hunter, where the deer where the deer allowed him to milk her in reward for his mercy. In
Wow.
yet, in yet another legend, the deer breastfeeds a lost infant for years, and after the boy was found, the deer voluntarily followed him.
Notice the hymn for both of those,
Yep.
female deer and that. Yeah. And you know what's really interesting is that cattle goddesses like Hathor and Isis and others, and Hera and stuff, also nurse kings
Yes.
and princes and pharaohs. So there is this connection between, there seems to be a connection between horns and nourishment and milk.
Yes.
Very, yeah, it's very interesting.
The progenitor primo. I don't know this word. Primogenitor.
Sure.
Do you know that word?
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that correctly?
I think it just means it's the first progenitor, the one
Okay,
before.
so the first progenitor of the Mongols was a
Ah,
beautiful female deer. According
right.
to a legend, the Golden Clan of another word I'm not even going to try and pronounce, the predecessors of Genghis Khan, was started by this deer.
Yep. Not surprised.
I mean, so over and over and over again. And then he goes on to talk about shamanism among the majority of Turkic people and the image of the deer as being important to that religious tradition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think I want to, like I said, there's a lot more here, but I feel like we're running out of time. But I want to show you some of the images because they're just so striking. Um, oh, there's one other cute little folk tale I'd like to share with you, if I may. Do you want to talk about horns, Carla?
You want me to talk about horns? What do you mean? I thought you were reading a folk tale.
I am, but I'm looking for it. Want to talk about
Oh,
horns?
oh. Um, Horns
I mean, you don't have to,
are very important. No, I don't know. I don't know what
but
to
it's
say about it.
similar, right? I mean, like what you found about horned women, horned
Yeah.
goddesses. I mean, a lot of it is the same, right? There are folk
Yeah.
tales and fairy tales and legends that are similar. Is that true?
I don't know, actually. I don't know that the horned, so I do blend that horned goddesses and antler goddesses and deer goddesses together. I do blend them together because I think they're kind of part of a similar,
Mm-hmm.
body of work. But I would say that deer and antler goddesses tend to be a lot more forest divinities. So
Right,
places that have either the animal or the forest, where horned goddesses are even in places that are more desert or other environments, um, where there's more cattle, let's say, rather than deer.
right.
That would be sort of the only difference. But I think I do blend them together in a way because it's a similar, I don't know, symbolism.
Right, right. Well, and I think in all of those tropes, no matter what the animal is, and whether they're horns or antlers, because like in all this reading, I found cultures that also worship the female elk.
Yep, yep.
Um, that it's about power and protection,
Yes,
right?
yes. And in the case of the elk too, I think also in the reindeer, there's something about um a a powerful mother, a mother
Hmm.
that can feed a larger group or a
Right.
big group or a big herd. And in the case of humans, maybe a community. I think there's something there too. And same with the like cattle, like cows, like big cows. There's always like this idea that their milk nourishes an entire generation of.
Right.
So yeah, there's something there about the quantity of milk as opposed to maybe just one human woman, but like this animal is and I don't know, this is just my own idea, but there's something also about them being herbivores.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? There's just something there. I mean, there are wolves that nourish babies, and there are some lionesses that nourish babies, but there's some, I don't know what it is, but there's something about them being herbivores that seems to be maybe surreal a bit. Like there's something like I think humans like that idea of a pastoral yet powerful figure,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Like I find that part really interesting. Like the bear mother, there's a lot of bear mothers, but the bear mother tends to be way more protection rather than
Right.
feeding milk.
Right.
There's something about the milk of herbivore, like cattle or herds, that humans really like symbolically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that there is herd animals,
Right.
right? Except the symbology of the wolf. Well, no,
Right.
but wolves are pack animals
They
too,
are pack animals. Yeah.
right? Okay, so I'm gonna share this. I found my
Okay.
folktale,
Spirit.
and then I'm gonna show you some pictures, and then we're gonna be done.
Okay. Excuse me.
I'm taking a nap when we're done with this. Are you?
Me too. I'm going to take a nap. Me too. It's one of those days. It's the power, I think, of this new moon is very powerful.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a later legend. Like this, he doesn't say how much later.
Okay.
This might be a medieval legend.
Okay.
102. Yeah, it doesn't say. But anyway, so this is a Turkic legend.
Okay.
And the name of the folktale is Anna Morale, which means mother deer.
Love it.
Oh, we have to talk about that too, the translations. Okay, maybe we're going to be here for just a minute. So here's the story. When a hunter named Nurali chased a horned deer to the edge, and it says horned rather
I was
than
going to say,
antlered,
that's interesting.
chased a horned deer to the edge of a cliff and aimed at her, milk started pouring down to the rocks from the breasts of the deer. Witnessing this, Nurali condemns hunting, took the deer to her fawns, saving her from a jaguar along the side of the road. Returning home, the hunter broke his gun, but memories of the witness scene on the cliff led him to incurable illness. A sorcerer told him that the only medicine for Nurali is the plain yogurt from deer milk. Drinking this yogurt, Nurali will be reborn to life again. Once, in the middle of the night, Nurali asked his wife to take an empty bowl and step outside of the house where the horned deer was waiting to give her milk. The woman brought a bowl close to the breasts of deer, and hot milk started pouring in. Then the deer dropped a tear from her eyes into the bowl, and the milk turned into plain yogurt. And I guess the story goes on to him being cured. That's where it stops. And it says the murder, other than for ritual purposes, of totemic animals was taboo. Nurali, the character of the legend, had killed many deer during his 60 years of hunting experience, but pouring milk from the deer's breasts woke him up, forcing him to realize the sinfulness of his deeds. His repentance caused his illness, which was only relieved after drinking the plain yogurt from the mother deer's milk.
Wow.
Cool,
Wow.
right? So
Wow.
I just wanted to show you some images from this article. Because like I said, this article is very much based on archaeological finds,
Okay.
and some of them are just stunning. Like
Oh,
this one.
wow.
So this was a tower castle in Kishishu. Isn't that cool?
I mean, it's Assyrian. No, that's not the Assyrian. This is the Median castle. But it's so much like the sacred horns of
Well,
Crete.
it says here that this is an Assyrian relief.
Okay, that's what I was reading. So Assyrian is Iran.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I said, I just wanted you to see some of these images because they're so friggin' cool.
Really, really amazing the ideas of these horns on top of these castles and on top of these like the homes and places of people.
Right? Sorry, I'm trying to find my images. Where's my little slider bar?
It's on the other
Where's my,
side.
where's my little page turning thing? Oh, there we go. I like these a lot. I've seen this before.
What is it? It's a metal standard. It looks, I don't know, what is it? Looks like a painful ring.
It is, I can't read any of this.
A ritual standard of a stag appeared in the middle of the second millennium BCE on the representations of late Bronze epoch. They are especially diverse and popular compared to the following periods. So lots and lots of these standards and zoomorphic vessels of deer. Wow. And this, ironically, this is in Turkey. I mean, it's not ironic. It's in Turkey and Armenia and all these areas.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, these figures are incredible. The bronze deer.
Right.
There's definitely a ton of these bronze deer
Right.
ring.
Everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah, these are stone reliefs, a sarcophagus fragment.
And they
Wow.
have these vessels.
On the
I
vessels, they
thought
have,
this one was really interesting. Um, because this says which of these figures might be a deity. If the figure is a deity, then perhaps the deer would be the divinity's sacred animal, making the woman standing on the deer's back an animal patroness. So
yep.
this is the woman right here. And
Mm-hmm.
she's standing on the back of a deer, which they've never seen anywhere else.
That's incredible.
We don't know what that means. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, I'll send you a PDF of this article just because
Yes, please do. Please do.
the
Because
images are so cool.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, in one way, the deer must have been their number one source of food
Right,
and source of hunt and source of everything. But that doesn't negate the fact that it becomes a sacred animal and then becomes associated with the goddess, with
right,
women, and then becomes a symbol for the divine feminine. And then later on, as Christianity arrives, becomes a symbol of demonic evil.
right,
Like all of that adaptation over adaptation over adaptation makes perfect sense, I think.
right.
Mhm.
It's appalling to me. It's always appalling to me when people don't know. I mean, these are just these things that I think are common knowledge, and then when I talk to people, I find out that it's not common knowledge at all. Like
Yeah.
people think that people don't know that the devil is a Christian concept,
Yes.
that outside of Christianity, people don't believe in
The
a
devil.
devil
Yeah. Yep.
or Satan, or
Yep.
they don't know the difference between Satan and Lucifer,
Yep.
or the mythology that goes with either of those things. I mean, it's just
Yeah, I find that highly disturbing. And so when I say to people the devil is a fiction, the first reaction is like nervous laughter.
mhm,
It's like, Right, like what? And then I think the more confident I am, and then I'm like, yeah, somebody made it up, and just kind of called it that and then went, oh yeah. And they just like, yeah, I think you're even, my young students that I tend to think, oh, young people are on social media.
Right.
They still have no clue. They're still like, what, Carla? Like,
I know it's so ingrained.
yeah,
I
and I
know.
always say that doesn't mean the evil doesn't exist, because of course
Right.
evil is, you know,
Right. Right.
but this dude, half goat, half man, or whatever it is, this guy with antlers or whatever it is. I mean, that's all fiction.
So Carla, so I do think that there are definitely similarities and crossover in these symbols and the stories that go with some of these symbols and the archaeological evidence to support our theories about horned goddesses and antlered goddesses and the things that they mean and the things that they represent. And, thank God for archaeology and
right?
anthropology. Thank goddess. This is a totally random side note. I noticed that the other day. It's still such a habit for me to say thank God. Like I have to
Mm,
remind myself to say thank God. I mean, I use those terms interchangeably anyway, but I
mhm.
like saying goddess
Me too.
anyway. I don't know, I like the way it feels. But it's just so easy to say thank God.
I suppose. Yes.
But
I'm doing a lot more dear goddess. Oh, dear goddess.
yes.
Like that. Yes.
I filmed a clip of myself saying, "Oh, dear goddess, what fresh hell is this?" Because I know I'm going to need it at some point.
Yeah. 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 I think
So,
you're absolutely right. I think that we have just scratched the surface of what is available. I think that these things have been available for a long time because,
right.
archaeology has been ongoing, but I think the interest is just beginning. Which
Yes,
is exciting. It's exciting.
it
Uh,
is.
you know, but it is also a bit overwhelming because I think it's so much. And I don't think that people at first understand how prolific the symbol is. And then I think when we start talking about it, it just feels like, oh my God, everywhere you turn, there's a deer goddess or an antler goddess or a horn goddess. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I
Well,
think that,
it's interesting. So what as I've been doing this research, I've come across, I can't pull them all off the top of my head, but even in this article, it mentioned other goddesses by name. And I have found other things that have mentioned other goddesses from other cultures by name. And if you go in and do a Google search with that name, you will find nothing. Nothing.
yes, yes,
Nothing.
yes. That's
I found a way to set my Google search results to be results from another country.
wow.
Yeah, I'll have to show you how to do that. Um, but still,
Yeah.
even then, nothing.
And that's one of the things I've been thinking about lately as a side note as well for the center and for the courses. I have been thinking about inviting people to put up courses on the site that I have on different things because one of the things, so for me, I did the goddess courses because I had such a hard time finding Google stuff about these
Mhm.
goddesses that were primarily sourced. But even things like this and other sort of symbolic objects and other things, it's very true that it's very hard to find like the early information. And these
Right.
PDFs, like you have, you either have to have an account or you have to have somewhere where you can download them and things like that. And so I don't know. I mean, I think it's a slow process to try and make as much accessible, much as accessible as possible. But I think there's more interest, I think we're gonna find that there will be more stuff.
Right. And so Liz Kelly and I, um, which will be the episode after this one, right? It's my season finale. She and I talked about this subject as well, and I referenced you quite a bit in that episode because I think the two of you will really hit it off, and we'll definitely have a panel episode next season.
Awesome.
Um, one of the things that I thought we could do, or at least, the three of us could work together to form a collective among the people that we know, who would be willing to participate in such a thing. I was telling her that I remember, this was many years ago, this is probably 15, 16, 17 years ago, that some nonprofit organization, I don't remember who it was, but they gathered together a bunch of people and they did a campaign where they did some kind of statistical study about Wikipedia and came up to the unsurprising conclusion that like 90% of the editing, because anybody can go in and edit Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was, some alarming, like, 85 or 95% of all the editing done on Wikipedia was by, European men, white European men. And so it was an African American thing, right? Like they had this kind of campaign where people would sign up to volunteer for, however many numbers of hours per week to go into Wikipedia and either edit or put in new entries. I think we could do something like that to either to have people sign up to either correct inaccurate information that has been I don't know, what's the word we use for what's the term for whitewashing for like male washing? Can we just call it that?
Yeah,
Male
I don't know.
washing. Something that's
Yeah.
been rewritten,
Yeah.
to from the male gaze,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever that is. And make entries for these fucking goddesses that people have never heard of.
Yeah.
Because you have to, really do some sleuthing to find out about them at all.
Yeah. I'm totally for that. I think it's
And I think
important
that's
to
something
share.
that between the three of us, we know plenty of women who would be interested in kind of coming together and making that happen. I think that is well within our capability
I
to do
agree.
that.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, no. That sounds like a plan. We have to make stuff accessible. It has to be out there. Yeah.
So that is the theme, I think, for season 3, because it came up a lot during the second season, right? How do we further? That's what this podcast is all about, right? Bridging the gap between the emotional spiritual experience and academic research. So I'd like to take that one step further in the third season and actually try and do something
Yeah.
about that. How do we
Yeah.
get, hard facts and academic research into the hands of the everyday goddess seeker? And how do
Yeah.
we bridge the gap between those two things? So
Yeah. I like that.
coming up next season on the Girlfriend God.
That's right. That's right. That's
But
right.
I'm glad that you're here for all of it, Carla. And I have to tell you that the woman who interviewed me earlier today for her podcast, that's hopefully coming out in the fall, um, I mentioned you today, and she said to me, I made some reference as to how we met, which is because of this podcast, and I listened to your podcast, and that's how she met me. Is she listened to my podcast, and she said, "Really?" She said, "I thought that you and Carla have known each other for years." And I
I
said, "It
love
does feel
that.
that way." Does
I
feel
love
that way. So,
that.
yeah,
Yes. We are what they used to call fast friends.
that's right. But you
That's
have
right.
become a friend and an often, I was going to say occasional co-host, but you're kind of an often co-host now. So
I like it. I like
I
it a
like it
lot.
too. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, that is a wrap.
Thanks for
I'm going to let
having
you
me
go home
again
and take a
and
nap.
again.
I too am going to take a
Go home
nap.
and take a nap.
And I'll talk to you soon. As always, may the peace of the goddess be with you.
And also with you, sister.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you want more of The Girlfriend God, you can find The Girlfriend God and The Girlfriend God podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. The Girlfriend